Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board Number 2 public meeting of April 26, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Garagos is absent this evening. Board Member Karoglian?
Here.
Board Member Malikian?
Here.
Board Member Sakai? Here. Chairman Zarifian?
Here.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on April 18, 2012. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards. Chairman Zarifian?
No.
No oral communication cards? All right.
No.
There are no staff announcements this evening. We have one item on tonight's agenda, and now I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Zarifian.
Thank you very much. Shall we get started?
Good evening, Chairman Zarifian and board members. This item before you today is located 1222 North Louise Street. Case number 2 PDR 1202055-A, and this is a first-time submittal for final review. The subject property is located within the R1 zone, floor area ratio District 2. The lot is approximately 10,000 square feet in area. It is rectangular in shape and is relatively flat throughout. The subject lot is currently undeveloped with the exception of a small shed located at the rear, which will be demolished as part of site preparation. There are also, what's unique about this property is that even though it's vacant, it contains mature landscaping, including many mature trees as well as a variety of fruit trees. The applicant is proposing to construct a new two-story single-family residence and attached three-car garage. The third parking space will be tandem and a detached guest house. The one-story guest house will be situated at the front of the property, with 25 feet away from the front property line, while the single-family residence will be located at the rear, about 69 feet away from the front property line. The size of the house will be 3,185 square feet, and the guest house will be 475 square feet. The size of the residence requires a two-car garage. This is based on the zoning code. However, a three-car garage is proposed. The site planning of the resident and guest house is sensible and appears in that the one-story guest house will be closest to the street, while the main residence will be placed at the rear of the property. The placement of these buildings helps resolve some of the massing concerns and also help maintain the rhythm of the street and the neighborhood context. Because of the existence of mature landscaping and trees, staff recommends that the mature trees located along the north property line be retained. Doing so will help maintain some of the existing landscape quality and its overall appearance. Otherwise, the lot will be re-landscaped with drought-tolerant and or California-friendly landscape plants. As previously stated, one way the building's mass and scale can be addressed, particularly as seen from the street, in this case, is to place the one-story guest house at the front and placing the two-story home at the rear. And generally, all other elevations have a level of consistency in their articulation and fenestration, and both are appropriate in achieving a suitable mass and scale overall. However, the south elevation may benefit if its massing is broken up further. The project FAR, setback, and height all meets the zoning code. As for building design and detailing, the neighborhood is comprised of a mix of architectural styles, such as minimal traditional, Spanish colonial revival, and craftsman. The applicant states that the proposed design of the project is a Spanish colonial revival style residence. The home will be finished in stucco and will contain fiberglass single hung and casement windows, and will be clad in two-piece clay barrel tiles. And other features include arches, decorative vents, and a porte cochere, which is attached to the guest house. These materials are consistent with architectural styles and appear to be of high quality. Overall, staff recommends approval of this project with 9 conditions and 1 consideration. If you would like, I can go over the conditions, but just for the record.
Sure.
Condition number 1, that the existing mature trees along the north and east property lines with a tree trunk greater than 24 inches are to remain. 2, side lights windows should be implemented in lieu of the casement windows on both sides of the sliding glass door on the first level and the French doors at the second level, which is shown on the east elevation. 3, the fiberglass windows are to be block frame with a recessed placement and are to include wood seals, exterior horizontal muntin, not internal, and stucco bullnose surrounds to complement the chosen style. The new driveway should be constructed with a permeable surface, such as a California driveway with grass strip or brick pavers. That smooth trowel stucco, as opposed to rough stucco, should be applied to complement the style. And 6, the top of the arch shown on the left, which is the north elevation, should match the top or head of the adjacent windows and door. 7, a variety of California-friendly ground cover and shrubs should be utilized in lieu of the proposed marathon grass at the front and rear of the lot. 8, if a new fence were to be included with this project, a wood fence should be provided. 9, as a substitute to the proposed roof vents, attic vents should be provided. And this is a consideration. As a consideration, the massing of the second story should be broken up further to help reduce the bulky appearance. And in conclusion, I would also like to share with the board that staff had telephone conversations with 5 property owners within the neighborhood. And in summary, what we heard from these neighbors is that there's concern that the project will tower over the neighborhood, and that the development will turn into a multi-family complex, and that the size of the project is too large, and that there's concern with the parking in the neighborhood, and that the trees will be lost as part of the proposed project and the mature landscape. And we also received 2 correspondences which we have placed in front of you from 2 additional homeowners. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have a comment. Speaking of the correspondence, I would like to have copies of these CC to me or probably to all the board members before the meeting starts, especially that one is sent or was sent on April 21st and the second on April 24th. So
Okay.
I would appreciate that.
I have a question. What's the concern again about this changing to a multifamily, where it's shown as a single family?
Correct. Staff has explained that to the neighbors who have called us, but I guess it's the size, the proposed size of the resident.
So because it's large, it means that more families...
And as well as the guest house, correct. that there's a potential that a fear or concern that the guest house may be rented out to a separate family. But just for the record, the zoning code prohibits the rental of a guest house because a guest house is not an independent living quarter or unit.
Okay. Thanks. So at this point, oops, minor problem here. Sorry. Thanks. I would like to open the public discussion. First speaker, I noticed that there are two applicants, so whoever would like to, Arlene, please come forward.
Good evening, board members, Chair Zarifian, and everyone behind me in regards to this project. My name is Arlene Ajurian. I'm here with my business partner, Katie Flores, from AMK Studio. We're a design company. We're based in Irvine, 2152 DuPont Drive in Irvine, 92612. Just wanted to add also, before I continue, that I'm also a resident of Glendale, and I have been one for 15 years. So I understand Glendale. I am intimately familiar with how things are here and what our neighborhood context is, lifestyles are, cultural, everything. So our reason for being here today is just so, I'm sorry, go ahead. Katie is going to be handing out some supplementary exhibits that we've prepared in the last several days to help explain things that might have been lost in translation as we are hearing some concerns from the neighbors. So our reason for being here today is basically to explain the intent of the designs and to also acknowledge these concerns and to explain better perhaps that the concerns are, they've already been addressed in the drawings for the most part, or we're willing to listen and see what we can do. The intent, as usual, for a good design is to have basically the lot that we have, or we're looking at, is to maximize the value of the lot, to make good use of it, and to provide a product that the client, that meets the client's goals, as well as fits within the character and the mass and the scale and the context of the neighborhood. And we think we've done that. We believe passionately in the solution that has been presented in front of you today. The challenges that we had to face, as you might be able to tell, is the fact that, for example, we have a 50-foot by 200-foot lot, which is atypical. Usually a lot of 200 with a 200-foot depth has a wider width. And so the challenge, therefore, is to be able to provide a project of good, decent square footage for the lot size, which is slightly over 10,000 square feet. The goal, therefore, of providing a 3,000 square foot, more or less, I think it's 3,100 square feet, livable main house, along with a 475-foot guest house, and have that look compatible from the street view. And again, based on the exhibits that you're looking at, exhibits number 1 and number 2, we provided street scenes. We believe that by pushing the main house back 69 square feet from the front property line, as well as providing the guest house in the front, we have addressed these concerns and so brought down the mass and the scale of the project. Additionally, I know we're willing to maintain some of the mature trees on the northwest corner of the lot to provide additional screen. And we also have a row of trees on the south side of the lot that are, I believe, the African ferns, right? So we'll be able to provide, again, another additional layer of landscaping there. So the challenges that we had, I would say the last thing just to mention is utilization of the entire site. Being a 200-foot deep lot, we didn't want to have, for example, if we pushed the house forward, we didn't want to have a 100-foot depth of lot that was not maximized, not used. So there's that. So our approach and what we did in our design, just want to mention with the exhibits that you're looking at. Exhibit 3, which is marked on the bottom right corner, shows, in looking at the Spanish style, we decided that best use of, actually, in using the Spanish style, there were opportunities that were presented that we wanted to maximize with the prototype. So with the Spanish style that is prevalent in Glendale, we have one-story elements that break up a two-story mass. It's all over the place throughout our neighborhoods. And as you look through the pictures and as you look through the examples shown, especially the one in the left bottom corner, it's somewhat deceiving whether or not the element itself is attached to the house or not. Sometimes, that's one of the things where even if it was detached, the design or the intent of the Spanish, that prototype would still be maintained well. And the second prototype we used was the courtyard concept, which is definitely something that is part of the Spanish motif. And the third was to actually combine that with the front entry as far as the front entry courtyard approach. And so we wanted to romanticize this and really make this project sing with the fact that we can have a distinct pedestrian walkway, distinct from the vehicular access, and provide a method of going through a process of design elements, from landscaping to continuing underneath the one-story porte cochere. We envision a hanging fixture that is centered along the pair of French doors on the guest house, and then continue beyond with the courtyard on the left that opens up, and see the arched entry of the main house beyond. So to us, this is a romantic intent of this project. Finally, as far as the guest house goes.
Actually?
You
All
need
right.
to probably wrap up
Okay.
at this point.
No
but
problem.
You'll be called back for any
No problem.
rebuttal.
Can I just say one more thing? As far as the guest house is concerned, there are some existing prototypes in Glendale, so we just decided to take those prototypes along with everything else I just mentioned and come up with our solution.
Okay.
I have a question.
Any questions? Yeah.
I didn't quite understand the reasoning behind putting the guest house in the front and then putting the building in the back. What was the reasoning, or did you?
Several reasons. So the first reason was because by bringing down, we used the guest house as the one-story element that was the way of bringing down the mass and the scale of the two-story building in the back. And we also wanted to use that as a way of creating the courtyard entry. So on a 50-foot wide lot, what happens is, well, on a 60-foot wide lot, this would be the basic design that we see all day long, which is the courtyard entry and then the walk through the courtyard and into the front door of the main house. On a 50-foot wide lot, that gets a little adjusted. So what happens is that the one-story element rotates in front and the courtyard becomes the space between the main house and the courtyard, the guest house itself. Plus, there are additional lifestyle objectives here. Whether or not the guest house is in the front or the back, really, the intent of it is to be used as a home office or, for example, I understand that it can't be a business, for example, that is run out of the home office, but someone who's, for example, a professional who just wants to have a space at home that is away from the main house itself. Also, it could be used as a rec room. It could be used as an artist studio, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought it was also a good way of providing kind of an entry, like a gateway for this project itself.
Okay, thank you.
Question about the trees. You said you were considering keeping the existing trees.
Yes, the mature tree is on the northwest corner of the lot.
Okay.
There's, I think, 3 giant ones there that were...
That you were okay with keeping
Yes,
them.
yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you very much. Next applicant, Katie. That was okay. Next speaker, Nelson Zar. Zar? Zar. Okay.
Hello, all. I'm as the landscape designer for the project.
And your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Nelson Zhao, and my address is 707 East Winnie Way, Arcadia, California. So the intent for my design for the landscape would be to complement the style of the Spanish Revival, thus plants from the Mediterranean and plants from Southern California natives would thrive in this community, so it would kind of match with the same style of the house. Shown on there is the existing trees that exist. The large ones in the front especially are to be remained. That was specified in my design requirements. The issue with going through a long driveway would be you want to have some different phases in the landscape. So you would have some lawn in the front and then some shrubs, and it would kind of be layered on and so on. In the backyard, it kind of creates more of a landscape for privacy with larger trees, especially an olive tree that kind of provides character and comfort for everyone in the area. So I'll take any questions.
I have a question. I have lots of questions.
Go on.
Starting with the back, the fire pit, how far away is that from the seat
That
wall?
is 10 feet.
It's 10 feet from the fire pit to the seat wall, or the
No,
whole
no,
thing?
10 feet to the
To the back of the seat
property
wall?
line. Property
From
line.
the fire?
Yeah.
Right. And you don't plan to landscape behind the seat wall except for the trees?
Just that one tree in the back.
Are there fences or walls?
Well, there
or-
was going to be a proposed gate that was going to be sent in a little later, and then for just the backside end is just existing right now. With that seat wall, it kind of creates a cover, and you're using just concrete as a walkway around that area.
So I'm sorry, the existing right now is a, like for the back and the side?
It's just a fence, right?
Chain link fence
Yeah,
with
but,
fence or something?
Yeah, but we're gonna have some landscape to kind of create some shade and some screening for that area.
Okay, second question, along the front of the house, you mentioned that you wanted to do a sequence of different landscapes as you lead up to the house. And a lot of people have mentioned, trying to screen the house from the street and keep the existing trees.
Yeah.
One of the comments the staff had was to keep all trees over 24-inch diameter. Without knowing what the trees are, it's kind of difficult to just blanket across, say, all trees over 24 inches should be kept. How do you plan to integrate what's existing with what you have and show that?
Well, most of the larger trees right now are in that the turf area that's provided.
Okay.
And then most of the other trees that are a little bit smaller, that meet just the minimum requirements of the 24s,
Yeah.
it could be relocated into the backyard, or it can move onto either the front yard or kind of on the side to provide, keep the natural integrity of the area.
So in the front yard, if we were to say add more foliage, add more landscaping, and
Yeah.
that would kind of fit with your design?
It would still fit, yes.
Okay.
So the back 24-inch diameter tree that is there, and then there's a 12-inch diameter, and I'm trying to figure out, are these proposed or?
Those are proposed, yes. There is
Well-
one existing,
This is existing, right?
that's the existing.
Yeah, but that. So that 24-inch tree,
This is going away.
it's going away, right?
You're saying that all the trees in the back
Uh-huh.
are going away?
It just,
Or some are getting, and you're
The- the
putting
tr-
in new trees?
yeah, I'm putting new trees for it.
And the ones in the front,
The ones in the front will remain because I wanted to keep, natural landscape of the street that it has existing right now, and then add on with some small shrubs and ground covers.
The 12-inch diameter buckeyes near the porch area, those three, those are remaining?
Those will be removed.
those are
Removed.
Yeah.
Have you done a tree report on the site, on this property?
Oh, it was what was given to me.
Okay, so beyond this, we don't, if a tree report is done by a professional, they would tell you what kind of tree it is, besides
it's-
just the 3 or 4 trees that we have located on here. They have to do an actual, this is this, it's this size, and
I thought
this is it. Okay.
there was a key on the, right there.
Right. And then I'm confused about this relocate Japanese maple to adjacent property per landscape plan that you have in the southern property.
Yeah.
Is that exactly what it means? They have
Yeah.
a maple
They have,
there
they
that
have
you're
the
gonna
existing
put-
tree, and we're just relocating to the back.
Okay. Why not use existing maple that you have on your property? And the 8-inch diameter or 6-inch diameter, one of these two.
It would have
front.
just given a little more height to the area, and kind of there's already another layer that's a little the shrub layer would kind of blend in too much with it, so we would just kind of take it out and have something kind of more drastic for looks.
So, but you have. What I'm trying to get is you have 2 maples on this property, and then if you count the
Yeah.
adjacent property that you could use, but you only plan to use one of them. You're not planning to use the one that's currently on the property. And I'm just wondering why. Why not try to integrate that into your design as well?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just asking you. It can be any answer. You don't want to use it.
I just figured the other one was more aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
Actually, I think perhaps the applicant needs to be called up because these are questions that need to be clarified at this point in time before we go much further. So if there is, you have a quick answer? Okay, please.
You need to state their name.
Just wanted to clarify that the existing property that's adjacent, that as you can see on the Google Earth, the driveway is actually partially on our property, so that the driveway of the adjacent parcel needs to scoot over. So that's part of the problem. That tree would have to get taken out anyway to move the driveway fully onto the property. Does that make sense? So between 1222 and 1220, the driveway needs to move over so that way both driveways can fit.
Okay.
Did she state her name?
Yep. Did you want her to state her name and address?
Well, that's okay. If you don't mind stating your name and address just for the that we have it on record.
My name is Katie Flores. Address is 2152 DuPont Drive, Suite 240, Irvine, California, 92612.
Thank you.
And just to clarify also, the trees that are going to be maintained in the northwest corner are not actually shown on the landscape plan.
I understand. It was just so that, the front, this existing plan that we have right here was following along with the guidelines that were recommended on the sheets. That's why I didn't put it in, because I figured we would be using this one as an existing for demo, and then the other one as a proposed.
Okay. So I think that the board will need to clarify that in your comments, which tree specifically, if you would like to have maintained as part of the project, or which are to be removed as well.
Well,
so.
okay, I'll talk about that later.
Yes. Thank
you.
Next speaker, Andrew Song.
I don't even know what this is.
I'm sorry, Andrew Sung is not going to speak?
No?
Okay.
Thanks. We have Christine Song. There we go.
Sorry, I was chosen as a speaker for my family. I guess my name and address is Christine Sung, and I actually will be we're building this house for me to move in there. I'm sorry?
Address now.
My address currently is 1615 Van Horn Lane, Redondo Beach, California, 90278. Yeah. And I just to start with, I grew up on this street. I lived the first 18 years of my life here. And I just moved away to go to college, finished grad school, and that's why I want to come back, is to come back to my home, and that's where it's been for the first 18 years of my life. The main reason that we're building this house is it was a part of my late father's dream for all of us to live near there. My mom would be living next door, and I'd be living in the house next door to her. And I work 100% virtually, so I don't have an office. I work for the federal government completely at home, which is why I need a separate space, a workspace, where I wouldn't have my home life and stuff interfering with it. So that's one of the big reasons we asked Arlene and Katie to sort of draw up a plan that would fit my lifestyle. As for, let's see, what else? I think we were really careful. When we hired Arlene and Katie, we wanted to make sure we addressed any concerns that our neighbors had, and we were very, cognizant of it. And even when we built it, you'll see we made sure our neighbor, who's to the north of us, wouldn't have to deal with us peering into her home. We made sure it was like a double open space. So we also recognized that there's parking issues. I lived there for 18 years. I always had to fight for parking spots on the street. So we made sure we had plenty of parking for our building and that we wouldn't impact our neighbors. So just a few things I just wanted to make sure you guys had information-wise. Any questions at all? Nothing?
No. Thank you. Rita Lozano.
I am Rita Lozano, and I live in 1230 North Louis, next to this project. And I have few concerns about that the project is too large for our neighborhood. 2 homes in that space. The lot is not very wide. I've been living there for the past 30 years. And my concern is that there may be later on used for rental or because the house is beautiful, but it just don't fit in there in the neighborhood. The doors don't face the street, the front door, like the other homes in our neighborhood. They already have one property there that it doesn't face the street. They're sideways. So it's a beautiful project, but I just think the space is not enough for the house, for two houses. Thank you.
That's it? Thank you so much. Christopher Ardh?
Hi, my name is Christopher Ardh, and I live at 1229 North Louise Street. I'm actually catty corner to the Sungs at 1222. Besides being a neighbor, I'm also a professional real estate appraiser. I've been an appraiser for 32 years. I want to provide the board with some facts about this particular block of North Louise Street. There are actually 13 existing houses on Louise Street from Stocker to the south to Randolph to the north. Of those 13 existing houses, 10 are one-story, 1 is 1.5 stories, and 2 are 2 stories, one of which is adjacent to the proposed project. That is the Sung's house directly to the south. The 13 houses that exist between these two blocks range between 1,246 square feet and 3,242 square feet. The largest of these existing homes is directly adjacent to the proposed project, which is owned by the Sungs. 9 of the 13 houses are less than 1,835 square feet. 9 of the 13 houses are less than 1,835 square feet. The 13 houses on this block of Louise have land-to-building ratios between 3.04 to 1, meaning there's 3 times as much land to building area. At the lowest, 3.04 to 7.22. There are, of these 13 homes, 11 have land-to-building ratios between 3.89 and 7.22. The proposed project, with its guest house, will have a land-to-building ratio of 2.72 to 1, which is below all of the 13 houses. If this project is approved, it will have the largest size at 3,660 square feet, which includes the guest house. This project, along with the abutting house to the south, which they own, will be the 2 largest houses on this block and will have the lowest land-to-building ratios of the entire 13 properties. When you have 250 by 200-foot houses and they face each other and they're both 2 stories, they're going to loom large over the entire neighborhood. As it is, the existing house is buffered somewhat by the lot that is vacant. But once you subdivide these 2 parcels, you're going to have 2 very, very large 2-story houses where most of the houses are 1-story and are much smaller. Effectively, we'll have 2 mansionized properties on Louise Street, which is incompatible to this neighborhood. And I strongly believe that if this project is approved as is, combined with the existing house, it could have a negative impact upon property values. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Matthew Bittetti. Oh.
Hi, my name is Matthew Bittetti, and I live right across the street at 1229 North Louise. And I'm an interior designer with a background in interior architecture. And my main concern is aesthetics. When we moved to the area we now live in, because it has a distinct residential feel. And this project they're doing distinguishes it from the multiple residential area that exists south of Stocker. So if they build these two buildings there, our neighborhood, while these properties might not be multi-residential properties, they will look like they are. As it is, I don't know if anybody mentioned this, I went by the other day and there were, I don't know, more than 6 cars in the driveway. And I can't imagine how many are going to be in the driveway when they build this other house. And while I've lived in this property now for 12 years, where I'm at now, and there are cars coming and going at all hours in this property. And I don't know who any of these people are. So I don't know what the situation is there. I've never met the people who live in the home. But I do know they're not good neighbors. The wall between Rita Lozano's property and their property is totally disintegrated, and they have shown no concern for replacing it. And Rita has had some problems with that. So I'm just saying I'm really concerned about what's going on and what they're trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Paula, Sigmund, Lowry.
I'm Paula Sigmund Lowry. I'm a neighbor on Randolph Street, which is the street that is just crosses Louise to the north. I'm in a 1911 Craftsman at 318 East Randolph Street. I'm a longtime docent at the Gamble House, where I have studied historic architecture and the feelings of neighborhoods. And our neighborhood is a wonderful collection of various architectural styles. As Chris just noted, the scale and the scope and the size of this building, it is a lovely design, but I would agree that it looks more like a multiple family dwelling. It looks, combined with the existing 2-story dwelling, it would look to me almost like a compound. Perhaps more of a condominium size home rather than the small character homes that so characterize Glendale. My property touches the back of this property, kind of kitty corner. The back of my backyard touches their backyard, so I have a view from my backyard into a little bit of their backyard, and I just feel that this is a massive dwelling compared to all of the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood. And I'm concerned about how it affects the feel, the character, the distinctive sort of vintage character of our area of Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marc Perlman.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marc Perlman. I live at 1305 North Louise Street. I am directly on the corner of Louise and Randolph on the northwest side. I have a view of this property from my front yard, from my bedroom window, from my backyard. And also the property which is located at 300 East Randolph. I have some photographs from that were taken by the residents. May I hand these to the board?
Just realize that once you hand them to the board, they become part of the project case file. So
That's
just
great.
to let you know.
I don't need them back.
Okay, great. Thank you. As long as
Approach.
you're aware.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, photograph number 1, and I'm sorry that I didn't have enough for everybody out here. Mom told me to bring down for everybody, but I didn't. Photograph number 1 is taken from the upstairs window of the folks who just bought 300 East Randolph. They are new owners in our neighborhood and have done a fantastic job of maintaining the appearance of that property while upgrading it to codes and various things. I have a letter from that homeowner. Their name is the Dawn family. This is from Mr. Bradley Dawn. I'd like to read that first, then continue with my comments.
How much time? 3
Actually,
minutes?
yes, unfortunately, if you read it, it becomes part of your allotted 3-minute time
Yeah, that's
period.
okay. I'm going to be
Yeah,
quick.
if you run out,
Okay.
we have to apologize for.
It's quite all right.
Thank you.
I'm just here to support the opposition. All right. We are located at 300 East Randolph, which is the southeast corner of Louise and Randolph. I'm writing this on the proposed building permit. We all know what that is. To be perfectly clear, I am strongly against the proposed home because of several issues. First, in order to build this home, mostly all of the trees on the lot will need to be cut down, which will directly impact the privacy that I have from the bathrooms upstairs in my home, as well as the neighborhood appeal. The photos are attached. Secondly, to allow this building, the building of this home would essentially be overbuilding the land for the proposed size of the home. Thirdly, the home has no plan to face the street as the norm for generally all homes throughout the city. Now, these are sentiments. I have shortened this for sake of my time, but these are sentiments that have already been stated, and we are echoing that. If you will take a look at the photographs, I think that you were presented sheets number 4, 5, and 6 kindly by the ladies who are the developers on this. You'll notice that everything here has a specific style. It's either Spanish or Mediterranean style, and regardless of where the guest houses may be located, whether they are above garage buildings or they are behind in the properties, they're not used as such. And if they are private offices, that you certainly don't see a lot of traffic coming and going. And lastly, if I may, because of the fact that this will increase the number of people living on that property, it will increase the number of cars and the need for parking, which we already suffer from the apartment buildings, which are one block down on the opposite side of Louise and Stalker. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I have a question from
Sure.
staff.
Or to the staff? Yeah, you can sit.
No.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. When you were presenting, you mentioned that they're only required to have 2 parking spaces, right?
Correct.
And the third one is an additional parking that they wanted to have, I guess.
Correct. That is the desire of the the
Now,
property owner.
The question that I have is, was the balance of the garage that was used, was that credited towards the floor area, or?
Yes, with the garage space, which is an additional 198 square feet, that would bring the FAR to 3858. But if you're just looking at the residence and the guest house, the FAR is 3660.
So,
but both numbers are within the maximum 40%.
okay. So 3858, so it doesn't trigger the third car because the actual residential house is less than 3,500.
Right.
But then the guest house doesn't count towards the
Parking,
parking.
yes.
Okay. And then the .39 FAR, which allowed 40%, that is based on 3858 or 30?
That's based on 3858.
Okay. Got it.
And have our last speaker, Rick Barnes.
Hi, name is Rick Barnes. Good evening, staff and commissioners. Looking at this property, I also lived on the street for over 30 years, just about 5 houses up from this, and just recently moved and owned 2 properties there. What I see on this project is, yes, I see some bulk, but I also see that this neighborhood, right behind it, if you see there's a tennis court and a pool, that's a 3-story condominium building on Stalker Street. On the corner, you have a care facility that's there, and once you go past Stalker, you got a huge 100-unit apartment complex. I'm sorry, it's a condominium complex also. Behind it, you have apartments. Next to this building, you have a 4-unit apartment building. There are guest houses, numerous guest houses up and down the street in that neighborhood. I did that one for a study once for a property. And my property also has a guest house, or I should say an outbuilding, because we don't have guest houses in the city. These are all outbuildings. But like Mark's house, He has a big three-car garage with a guest house over it. So when you turn and look at the corner of the smallest house, of course, is the northeast corner. The two northwest and the southwest houses are very large. So if you look, you got the little, there's Mark's house with the pool in the yard, and then next to it is the old Verdugo, the pink house on the corner, the southeast corner of that intersection is also a large house, which was the old Verdugo, it's a historic home for the Verdugo. No, it isn't. They have not applied for it, but it should be, if I'm not mistaken. Thanks, Jay. But it is a unique neighborhood. It's eclectic, and the other part is that this is a large lot, and I think what I saw, and when I looked at the plans, I really didn't like it until I started realizing that the little guest house in the front does create that effect of lowering it. The other part is I thought they were cutting down all the trees, so leaving the trees up really do make a difference. The other part is on the house next door. It does face front. It's just that the front door goes sideways, and it's feng shui and some other things that occur when you're looking at Oriental mythologies and things. You need to be aware that, that's important. We may not like it in Western culture, but there are things that occur. I've sold a number of homes in the area there. This area has been, my house was 1909 original construction. So, and it was a two-story. It was on 150-foot frontage at one time by 150. So the lots are there. It's just when I'm looking at it, I think that overall, once it's built, I think with the trees and stuff, it will fit in, and you'll have the trees softening the effect on everything. And it does fit for a larger home, and the market for a larger home in this neighborhood is also in demand. As to parking, right now the apartment buildings already come up. And on this, with a long driveway, and speaking about the house next door, the man is an invalid. They are moving, so there's a lot of things happening on that house right now. So that could be one of the reasons so many cars are showing up. Overall, I appreciate your candor in putting this together for him. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I think at this point, if the architect likes to rebuttal or answer some of the questions, please come forward.
Okay, so there were a lot of concerns that were voiced.
And actually, just to let you know, there's a 3-minute rebuttal period.
Okay. I may miss some, excuse me, but if I understood correctly, the main things were that this felt like a multifamily project and that it felt like a compound. So just want to make sure that we're understanding correctly. So we have the house itself is going to be separated from the existing lot of the Sungs, which is the existing house at 1220. We're going to have the driveway move over. We're going to have a 5-foot strip of landscaping there that will then lead up to a wood fence, starting from the property line, from the setback, excuse me. Then we're going to have another 6 to 8 feet of landscaping there along with the trees. That is going to separate these two lots from each other. There's going to be 13 feet of landscaping between these driveways. The proposed house is oriented towards the front. The front door faces towards the street. The guest house is two orientations. It acknowledges the street while having its main access point from the pedestrian walkway. That is purposeful. That's what we wanted to do, and it is good feng shui. The other, as far as the multifamily context or that question is concerned, I don't see it, but I'm hoping that the exhibit that we prepared for number 1 and number 2 has circled or the audience, and maybe perhaps we can visit that again. But the one-story porte cochere is just supposed to be the gateway for the house beyond, basically, and we think that the mass is compatible with this neighborhood. As far as the number of 2-story homes on this block, if we were to consider even 2 of the blocks together, we have about 10 to 11 2-story homes that are very large, and that's not counting the existing house that the Sungs own. So the 2-story or the amount of square footage being incompatible also, I don't think that that's something that is true for this particular project. We also have parking that we've provided that is over and beyond what is necessary for this project. Not only do we have the 3 parking spots that are covered in the parking in the parking garage itself, we also have about room for 7 cars or more. I mean, basically, we have a 69-foot driveway. So we have additional parking there for guests and visitors of this project. The FAR, I think, is settled at 36.4% for this project. That's including all the living space. That is the guest house and the main house itself, the maximum being at 40%. So again, we think that this is compatible with the neighborhood. What am I forgetting? Let's see. Privacy. So we've pushed the building back to a point where the main house does not have, except for, I guess I got to stop. There's only 3 windows on the north side that are looking over the garage at Rita's property, and everything else is either a 2-story volume where we don't have any living, that no windows overlooking anyone else's lot, or it's pushed back enough so that there are no privacy issues.
Right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I think this concludes our public discussion, and I would like to open the floor to comments by the board members. Who likes to? Alan, are you interested?
Sure, I guess I can start. I actually remember the original project that came in front of us, and I'm sorry to hear. My condolences. And it was a very nice house, but it had some issues. But I'm surprised that it never got to fruition. I like the house in the sense that the design is done very well. I don't think the neighborhood has an issue with the style of the architecture. I don't think the coral is here that we're going to talk about, why we are here primarily because of the design and the context and how it's situated. As far as putting the guest house in the front, it's probably one of the first one that I've seen. I appreciate the gesture of creating a 1-story and stepping that back and scaling it back, which is an interesting approach to a typical 2-story structures that are placed within the front. So as far as the scale and the mass of creating a 2-story along Louise, I think the stepping back of the 2-story definitely helps the situation. There's some design issues that I'm not comfortable with. There's some uncertainties in regards to the trees, what is remaining, what is being removed, because the plans are not as clear as the architectural plans. We're looking at the site plan, and I need to make some wild guesses as far as what trees are being removed based on the proposal. As far as a lot of the concerns and questions and comments in regards to the parking and other stuff, so we talked about the design. I'm fine with the design. The guest house sitting in the front, I understand creating a 1-story, and I think in a sense that for the front unit or the front house, which I don't remember the address, right adjacent to the north of the property, I think it's the most ideal structure you want to have there as far as the privacy, because you're going to have the least amount of occupants there at the least amount of time to kind of overlooking your property. So it's a kind of a unique situation there that we haven't come across, but I think it's a good solution as far as putting the guest house in the front. The size of the house. The size of the house is basically taking your entire lot and saying that I'm going to maximize this as best way I can and basically put this as large as possible. this was a variance case, you would have to justify why you are going that big, and how you can justify having that third additional parking, where you could have used that to break up the mass, reduce the square footage, and so on and so forth, which in the beginning you started talking about, you had a lot of sense as far as what the neighborhood is about and neighbors and everything, and I didn't get the sense of any kind of a meeting, a community meeting or presentations and everything that the community was involved. Based on my experience, when you have so many people here, I feel that there's the lack of communication between the neighbors and the applicant. So I would leave the size of the building for my colleagues, and I'll hear what they have to say. But one concern that I have for the front porte cochere and the structure, if going back to, I'm so happy that you brought these examples. In every example that you've brought in, the largest width of the porte cochere is the driveway width. What you've created a structure that is as large as the two-car garage, which is about a 16 to 18-foot wide section, and that's on your plans. So I think to create that architectural porte cochere element that you want to bring in, I think there's some in a lot of these cases there's some pedestrian entry elements. And then at the same time, there are these carports that it's usually porte cochere was done a long time ago. The cars were at that point a little bit narrower, but they got wider, and now they're really wide, and now getting smaller. But they would make it as wide as just the driveway. So to me, it's out of scale. I think it's too long and too big, and it defeats the purpose of creating that one-story structure. Even though the height is low, but you managed to create a structure that is as wide as the property width, which it kind of bothers me in the sense that the scale and the proportion of that front structure, it's not really doing what it's supposed to do to reduce the scale. As far as the how the two properties that are owned by same people, how they're going to be used in between them and so forth, I'm assuming that a lot of landscaping is going to come into play, and then I'll leave it to my colleague here to discuss that. But the front porte cochere is one issue, and the FAR is another issue that I have. So I'll just leave it up to, I won't make a decision right now until I hear everybody else, and so we'll go from there.
I think that's actually a really interesting observation about the porte cochere, because there is, like, you look at this and think, well, it looks pretty much, the idea is great, the one story in the front to break up that mass and set the big mass in the back. And when you look at the plan of the entire neighborhood, you know, the house next door, 1230, it's probably the best ideal solution for them to have a house that's set back. You don't have this looming building right next to you. So in that sense, I think, you know, neighbors are going to, you don't want anything next to your house in the first place. You don't want anybody towering over you. You want that to be just pristine landscape the way it was when you bought your house. So I understand that. I understand where the neighbors are coming from. But the reality is that when there's a property that could be developed, you know, they have the right to build whatever they want, size-wise, you know, style-wise, wherever they want to on that property, and it's up to us. I mean, we manage it by having percentages of floor area ratio and guidelines for them to follow, but ultimately, if it falls within those guidelines, we can't say you can't build here, right? It's your property. Its ability to kind of design it and build it the way you want. So I think what you've tried to do is probably the best that you could possibly have done in this situation. I like the style that you've chosen, the architecture. I think you've done a really good job in articulating that style, and the drawings are very easy to read, and so in all that sense, it's a great submittal for us to review. But again, that's obviously not why all the neighbors are here to say, you know, this is a terrible style and we can't read the drawings. So we'll just move past all of those issues of window sizes and details, which I tend to agree with staff's consideration, or staff's recommendations. So anything that applies to the design, I think you're probably okay with. They're very minor, and like the window, the stucco trowel, the window detailing, the type of windows that you have against opposite sides of the French doors. So, massing wise, I guess I have a little bit of concern about the size, the FAR as well, and I think part of that is because there's 3 cars being parked inside the building, but then that's a consideration you're giving towards neighbors to say, look, we can park 3 cars on our property. But in the same sense, it's also creating this very long wall with no windows and a more massive structure. So, I mean, I kind of want to hear what my colleagues have to say, too. I think some of the suggestions I would have is you could put more openings in it. Obviously, they wouldn't be view openings. You could break up that elevation with some openings. If you took out the third car in the garage and use that space for living space. You could park a car on the property like a turf block kind of a situation where you could landscape it in front. You could put the parking on the property so that you're giving consideration for a third car. It might actually be more useful to you to have it on the property as a surface parking hidden by landscaping to some degree. But, that's going to be, from your plan, probably the only place you could do that is in front of the guest house. Now, I think you need a lot of landscaping to conceal that. Maybe some site walls, tall shrubs. That might be an idea to explore when we're up here. But overall, I think getting one of the concerns with having the entry not facing the street. For me, that's not I don't have a big issue with that. I think that the window facing the street and then the garage doors facing the street, they all kind of give you that different layers of architectural elements that look like a house, so it doesn't look like you're just shunning your front to the street. And I think it's a great idea to have this courtyard built into behind the guest house, and so I think that the flow and the layout to me works pretty well. Landscaping-wise, I'm very uncomfortable with what's being presented because I have the existing tree plan with less than half of the species called out. I went to the site and took a look at it. There's a lot more large trees on property that are noted here. Not overly large trees, but they're big enough where someone would survey them, and they should know what they are because I knew what they were. So they're not like really off the wall crazy things out there. And with so much vegetation that I couldn't see because it's way in the back of the property, I'm looking to the plan to give me some information about what's there and what's going to be kept. And a lot of that is also on the north property line. I don't know, how close it is to the proposed house. Does it make sense to keep it? Can you keep it? So all these questions I have, and to say, well, we're going to make you keep all these trees that are a certain size, or all the trees that are along a certain boundary line. To put that restriction on there and not know, well, is it even feasible to make that restriction because maybe the house will be sitting on top of that tree, or you're going to damage the tree by putting a foundation in. So, and a lot of trees I saw in the front weren't in the best conditions. So to even say, well, everything over this size has to be kept, and then the arborist would go out there and say, well, this tree really should go because it's such a badly, not well taken care of tree, is difficult for me to say, this is a condition, and this is how it should be stated. So I think I would feel much better if I saw a landscape plan that showed what was intended to be kept, make sure that the drip lines of the trees are well beyond the construction of the house. I would probably put a condition in here that the city arborist would take tree forester would be a final approval along your process. So, but just to do that process beforehand so that I have a sense of that this is what your intention is. And I think if there's one of these pictures that the neighbor showed, the view from the corner house shows a lot of mature trees, and they're very, very tall, and they mostly block the site, the front half of the site. If those trees were to remain, I'd have no issue with oh, great, this house kind of goes away. But if all those trees were to be gone, it's a whole different, it's a whole different project. So knowing that information is, I could approve or, feel comfortable with what I'm looking at. So unfortunately, I think there's just not enough information in front of me right now to feel comfortable with the landscape. Otherwise, the landscape plan looks great. I think that it's a well-thought-out design. A question I had about the fire pit in the back was merely because, the fire pit's all the way up to the back and side property lines. And I think that you want to get more landscaping back there to buffer yourself from the neighboring properties. And also just because, to have a seating area that's right up against the fence doesn't really feel like you're in a landscape. So I would really say that you can keep the fire pit, bring the seating way in, or even just make that more of like a more informal space, and then put a lot more planting behind it, so that you feel like you're buffering between yourself and the properties adjacent, and also that you're feeling like you're in a landscape. But in terms of the landscaping material, I think it's pretty well done and well thought out. So those are my comments.
Yes. Well, without repeating what everything has been said already and discussed and presented by my colleagues, I should say that in general, I am fine with the design. And to me, the guest house design negates the two-story impression of the project. And I also appreciate the landscaping design, although it may have some issues involved. However, since we have not seen, at least the last few projects, we have not seen the landscaping designs here, I do appreciate the time and the effort that was put into it. More than the style of the house, more than the project itself, more than the size of the windows, more than the doors facing east, west, north, or south, and I'll leave that to further discussion. My concern, and I do believe that one of the main reasons I was appointed to this board is because it is my real concern about the cohesiveness in our communities, in our city, not the cohesiveness only when it comes to the properties or to the designs of the houses or the use of a specific house, but cohesiveness in neighborhoods. And obviously, having this many people here indicates to me one thing, I may be wrong, that probably there has not been a meeting with the neighbors. Probably it has been then. Probably individuals who were here were not invited or did not attend that meeting. Or even if they did, they are still under the impression that this is a humongous project that, as I was suggesting or asking staff earlier, had we had these letters CC'd to us sooner, instead of seeing them here, we definitely would have had enough time to read them and maybe even share some things with you here. What bothers me is people's impression and comments, such as one individual says, this parking design is a ploy, obviously distrust. And then it indicates that the apartments in the 1100 block, I'm assuming North Louise, are adversely impacting the residents. Well, if they are, then that issue should be addressed with that neighborhood, not to penalize these individuals now. In addition to that, another letter says or addresses the general parking problems in the neighborhood. Well, those of us who live in Glendale, we do know that Glendale does have a serious parking problem, regardless what part of the city you live. Again, it is not right for me to penalize one family or one block when there's congestion on another block because of people living on that block. That is an issue that needs to be addressed, not on this board, but most probably on either Traffic or Planning Commission. Another comment here talks about extended families have multiple family members. These comments, quite seriously, make me very uncomfortable. When we talk about issues, or we pretend, let me use that word, we pretend to be concerned about the properties, about the image of a street or a block. Let's address those one story versus two stories, 1,200 square feet house versus 2,500 or 3,500 square feet house, rather than addressing, and I know the subtitle here is when someone says these people, that to me means the person who wrote this looks at the builders or the new tenants or the new residents as someone other than him or her. Frankly, that irritates me. That should not be an issue to come to this board. It should not be an issue that we should be addressing in this city anymore. We're sick and tired of that attitude here. It is us, total, not us versus them. Just because I used to live on that street prior to Song family came does not give me the right to say they have no right to build because they are extended families. Because I don't like the design, maybe it's a point that needs to be considered, and I personally would consider that. But addressing an issue or bringing up an issue that has nothing to do with the project itself, to me, does not make sense. Unfortunately, it shows the intent of the individual or the lack of understanding and cooperation in the community, that something that we have been trying to create or recreate, enforce and reinforce constantly in this city. Now, having said all this, I may have a problem with or may be uncomfortable with the general size of the house. However, though, again, my main concern is the neighborhood itself, not only when it comes to the properties, not only when it comes to the structures, to the architectural design or the landscaping design, but also when it comes to people. When people can address their neighborhood issues amongst themselves, we here will not have to receive letters like this. We will not be forced to address issues like this, because I am sure each and every one of us in this room are ready and willing to go beyond that and address just the issues themselves. If we're not comfortable with the sizes, then let's address that. Saying, for example, that the door does not face the street, well, there are cultural issues there, there are beliefs there, that the owner of the property, based on those beliefs, wants the house to be facing not the street or east or west, whatever. We have to understand all that. And that should not make us or any one of us uncomfortable. Again, had all those interested or concerned been attending a meeting, if there was a meeting, and I'm understanding that there was, then probably some of... Okay, then my... Let's not go...
I'm sorry, we cannot talk.
If there was a meeting, then those who are here did not attend. If there was no meeting, then there should have been a meeting to address at least these minor issues, the sensitive issues, that people would not be coming up here and addressing it or repeating it, not only to the board here, but also to the viewers sitting at home. Thank you.
Thank you. So no one made a decision.
There is a decision, but we're just waiting.
There are recommendations by the...
Finish your comment, I'll make a motion.
Okay, yeah. I was going to talk about the same issue that Mr. Kirilarian mentioned, and we're going to just address architecture and adherence to guidelines here, and we cannot go beyond that. It's beyond our ability and powers. First of all, I'd like to commend the set that was sent to us to review because I think it's one of the good examples that I would like to maybe keep to show some of the other architects that I've always talked about the ability to see a site plan that goes beyond the edges of the site itself and shows the adjacent properties and how they...
Even though there was no section, but we'll go
The
beyond.
section is okay, yeah. But there was a lot of...
Enough information.
A lot of information that could show the nature of the proposal. But
But there's no section.
I think a lot of comments were made, and it's as far as the size is concerned, I think the size probably became one of the biggest issues. I like to make it very short as usual. I don't want to go for too long because I think a lot of things have been mentioned so far that I agree to most of them. But I like to very simply say that I think it's a very good design that has been proposed and brought forth to us. I don't think this is a mansionized house by any means. It might be by square footage large, but I think if you look at the three-dimensional drawing, it shows and it looks very small. And that there are houses that you approach, and once you enter, then you realize that it's bigger than it looks, and I think this is one of them. I don't have a big problem with the porte cochere, thinking that it could have been maybe 5 or 6 feet shorter. It doesn't really bother me that much. As far as the comments that were made for the landscaping, I think that's important to have that additional information that we can understand exactly what's going on. But I would, as I said, I like to make it short, and I'm more in favor of the project than being having negative points that can completely change this to a point that it will become a one-story house or comments in that nature. I think it's a good design, and it can potentially improve the neighborhood.
Can I go ahead and make
Sure.
some comments on my motion?
Sure.
I think I need some justification as far as the need for the third car. I think by eliminating that, I don't mean increasing the livable space. I think I want to see if really I want to make this building lean so that I know. I have no problem with the two-story. That's my personal opinion. But I have a problem with the overscaled size of the building with some unnecessary spaces that I think it creates issues for everyone. And at the same time, you're creating a mass that, along the south side, you're creating this, one flat area. So some justification. And as a friendly advice, and I'm technically, I cannot get into the inside of the house, but what you've created in the living room, you have two different ridges that are coming together, and it's going to look really odd. So I would, as a friendly advice, take a look at that. That may affect your exterior, how it looks. I don't know if the exterior building was dictating how this thing is going to look, but when you stand in your living room, look up, because it's a two-story, you got two ridges coming at two different points, and it's just going to create an odd shape there. As far as my motion, I would like to make a motion for return for redesign. My first item is to see if there's any way to reduce the square footage. And I don't mean by 2 square feet and coming back and saying, okay, I reduced the square footage. I want to be proven that this is the the leanest. I mean, I'm not saying get rid of bedrooms, I'm not saying get rid of, I just want to make sure that you've taken out all the extra square footages, just to bring it within some sense of the neighborhood and just making sure. And I'm kind of going one step into the neighborhood meeting that I'm assuming you guys are going to have, and I'm assuming that's the discussion you're going to have. So trying to help you guys and give you guys a direction, or if you guys are going to meet and discuss something to talk about. So that's one. The second thing is, I think the porte cochere definitely needs to be scaled to the structure, the front structure, so that it actually acts as a porte cochere and not a one-story building. Right now, I see it as a building and not a porte cochere. And you have, I don't even need to tell you what, you have examples that you've already provided us. So you have examples there. And then my other comment is, as far as the landscaping plan, which I generally don't get into, I just need to have a very clear understanding of what is going to remain, what is being proposed, and some of the concerns that we have a lot of mature trees and how we can find ways to save them if possible. And the last are the 7 or 8 or 10 items that staff has recommended. I want to add them as part of the conditions.
And if we can also...
We can, do you want, or does somebody wants to read it? So
Yeah, just so that staff understands clearly the direction from the board, I would like to go over some of the comments that we have heard so far, and you just sort of touch on most of them already, but I just want to make it official. So we heard from the board, generally the design is successful in terms of achieving an authentic look for the Spanish colonial revival style. However, there were concerns that we heard about the size of the porte cochere, specifically the width of the porte cochere. So what we heard was that from board member Malakin is that maybe reduce the width to a single car as opposed to the appearance of a double wide porte cochere.
I don't want to design it for them, but I think they have enough examples to make this thing work.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of scale issues. There's the scale height of the roof ridge versus the guest house ridge, and I don't want to. You don't need to write this down, but there's too many close calls.
Okay.
That doesn't really make that really significant. So I think if it is a porte cochere, it could be even a gateway or something that kind of takes you through, and maybe some open trail. I don't know. I mean, or maybe even a man door is put in with a solid wall or something that it's. I mean, they have a lot of examples, but something that brings that front building to a little bit more scaled guest house rather than a building, one-story
I
building.
wouldn't call it a gateway. That sounds more monumental and grand.
No, but I think it looks like a one-story house in the front, where it needs to look like a porte cochere, and it's not just like a covered, driveway. The porte cochere. I mean, they have examples of this. I mean, here I'll give an example, and even it's their example. It's the first one on the left, on the top. You know how the width of this is. It's exactly the width of the driveway. The roof of this is to the sill height. The ridge line of this is at the sill height, and then this structure is basically taller. But right now, when you look at the design here, I mean, you can look at it here. They're all working at the same kind of a level, which I think the porte cochere, if it reduces and lowers in scale, and this is, I don't know if this can get a little bit taller or whatever the case may be, to give it a porte cochere and a guest house rather than one-story structure. And that's what, I mean, you guys can argue with me on that, but that's just one approach. And within this, maybe within this small little porte cochere, maybe this is removed and you have a little gateway or some wooden arch or some, I don't know. I mean, These are just
So it,
one idea. I don't want them to come back with the exact same
Do you think
design
if
to
it's
it. so I don't-
lowered- Do you think if it's lowered, it will make the height?
Well,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
If you're talking about like raising this part, this conceals this roof here, and that brings that up, and that makes it more a part of this house behind it. Like there's examples, scale-wise, examples that say like this is a living room.
It's just
and that's
too many roofs
entrance
happening
and-
too close to each other. With
Right.
all these
You
ridges
have
are
that,
very
that.
close. I think you have, you have a ridge here, you have a ridge there, you have a ridge there. So you have these variations in heights that are creating these really interesting forms in the main building. But where you're looking at this as being all as one, which this itself, so-called porte-cochere, I think the scale of that needs to be as a porte-cochere scale rather than a building scale.
Could it be sort of summarized as redesign the proportions of the porte-cochere to be more compatible in terms of massing and scale with a guest house?
Beautiful. Thank you.
I'd rather continue.
It's Stephanie Reich. She's channeling it right now.
Is that what
Did your body?
Did she really do that?
Fantastic. No, Jay starts talking
Should
like her.
enjoy
We'll be
her
really
vacation.
concerned.
She should enjoy her
All right.
vacation.
That's
not
more
listen
colorful.
to this.
Staff also heard concern about the FAR, the proposed FAR, and maybe there's opportunity to reduce the number of parking spaces and revisit the interior space planning to see whether there's room to reduce the square footage without reducing the number of room, for example, the number of bedrooms.
I'm not telling them specifically to remove the garage, but all I'm saying is that that's one place that they can reduce. But I'm not saying remove that and
Correct.
then add
Yeah, that-
square footage
but
that are livable.
that would be an opportunity
That's
we
an
have to
opportunity
revisit. Yes.
to reduce the scale 200 without impacting the building and the all the
Correct.
components of that.
Mm-hmm.
You may even be able to push that section back in and then create a little bit of a variation in the front facade or something. I don't know.
Okay. And there's also a concern about the existing trees and what's going to be retained and what's going to be removed, as well as their relationship to the location of the proposed house. So I guess what we could ask for is a more detailed inventory of the trees, and also maybe clearly labeling which trees will be retained and which one will be removed under the proposed site planning also.
No protected trees in this.
None of the trees that's on the property are protected.
I think, in a lot of situations, we don't even get a landscape plan. We say, okay, it'd be nice to have one. When we get one, we have a lot to respond to, and so it's kind of like people don't want to provide it anymore because we have all these comments.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it actually will help the project if the neighborhood could see that, oh, that 50-foot tree is going to stay, and I won't see the house. I'm more at ease with this project than you're taking all the trees out and putting in these little, 5-6 foot tall trees that will take 20 years to get to the height that currently is there. So I think that's really important for this project to have the existing trees identified and located, and which ones they're keeping, which ones are not keeping.
Right. And again, that would be sort of along the lines of provide a revised landscape plan clearly indicating which trees are to remain and which are to be removed, and to keep as many mature trees as possible.
So at this point, it would be inappropriate or premature to give the applicant the direction as to which one needs to stay and which one needs to go.
Right. I mean, they have a landscape professional, so I would feel confident that he could provide direction in there.
And thank you. And we also heard about providing additional landscape behind the seat wall and moving the seating area around the fire pit further away from the property line.
Right. In general, the landscape here, I think you're going to use that to help hide your mass and hide all the construction. So the front yard, where staff recommended taking out the lawn and putting in a landscape, putting in more trees, or keeping the trees that you currently have, concealing and shading the guest house as much as you can so it's not even there. It's just like elements that pop through a landscape. That's really going to help the neighborhood understand that this isn't going to be kind of like how you're showing in this photo that you provided, where all I see is a house. To me, that's kind of scary. Now, if I'm seeing the house through things, like the other properties the other two-story properties on the site, they might feel more comfortable with that and understand that it's not going to be this in-your-face massive housing mass.
Something that I like to mention about the porte cochere is that if it becomes a house and the porte cochere, the problem, I think in that case will become, now we have a small house in front of the property, which in scale is so different from what's happening behind it. I think what the porte cochere does is kind of connects it in size better with what's behind it. That's my way of seeing it, rather than kind of this little thing that doesn't connect itself to the house. I think the porte cochere helps.
Well, I don't mind. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I have an issue with the width, the scale of that opening. Now, how they can solve that, it's up to them. You know, if they think that the height should remain where it is, and they can figure out a way. But I think it's just it doesn't act like a porte cochere. It looks like a carport, and you know so.
Well, I think your idea of the scale...
With the style of architecture that they're proposing, and the very close vicinity examples that are there, none of them have this size of a double-sized garage opening that goes through. And I think that is the scale that it's kind of, it bothers me as far as the front entry. And I think that needs to... Either the size needs to be reduced, maybe you meander the driveway, get this thing closer, get it around, and go back in and create more landscaping there, or move the, I don't know. I mean, I just think that scale is, you know.
Yeah, I think it needs to be the scale of a single car driveway that goes through it, the rest is a double car.
They're the designers, not them.
One small note I had on the landscape plan is there's no paving that connects the driveway to the walkway, which is indicated in their perspective. So that just needs to be corrected.
Okay.
So like in this perspective, we have the driveway connected to the walkway. There's a gap in the landscape that's not reflected on the plan. And that may even be an opportunity where over here maybe you put a column and a gate or some kind of other feature or something in the columns, could be a decorative element. I mean, that kind of, like what you're saying, creates more of a pedestrian, smaller scale, one-car scale versus a larger opening. That's what I kind of saw when you mentioned that in your presentation.
Okay, and as well as incorporating staff conditions and consideration to the motion.
I have two issues here. First, number 8, the condition number 8, it says if a new fence were to be included, I would like that to be very specific, whether we are asking for a fence, wood fence or not, instead of just leaving it unclear.
Okay.
And just for putting some neighbors' mind at ease, rental properties are not allowed on that block, are they? By law, they are not allowed, correct?
No, the subject property is zone R1 as well as the properties around it and to the north of it. So R1 zone would not permit multi-family dwelling. It's a single-family development zone.
Thank you. I just wanted that to be clear for everybody, so we don't come back to that issue. So am I assuming that there is a motion being designed or completed already?
Yeah, just to clarify, I agree with the issue of making the building smaller, but as I said, I'm more in favor of the building than be negative about it. But I think making it smaller definitely will help the neighborhood and the adjoining neighbors.
I believe there was a motion by Mr. Malakian with the comments he's made and also what staff has suggested in the report as a condition in consideration and what we just discussed.
Okay, I'll second.
And this would be to have the project come back, return for redesign. So this was a motion by Mr. Malakian and a second by Mr. Karoklian. This will be roll call. Mr. Karoklian?
Yes.
Mr. Malakian?
Yes.
Ms. Sakai,
Yes.
and Chairman Sarafian.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the case before us for hearing. If anyone would like to be re-noticed, we ask that you completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door, and that way you give us the address for where you'd like to have the postcard sent, as well as the case number and address, and to hand it to one of the staff members
we have
here,
meetings.
just because this case, if it does come back within 6 months, it will not go to a general 500-foot radius mailing list noticing requirement. It will simply be the postcards, so for interested parties, just to let you know, for those members of the audience. Now, we're going to go ahead and continue with the rest of our Design Review Board hearing, so if you don't mind, if you are going to exit, just exit quietly out the doors. Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation, consideration, and input. So, the next item that we have on tonight's agenda is the review of the minutes, and these minutes would be from April 12th, 2012. Our board members Karoglian, Garagos, and Sakai were present. So,
Can't approve them.
so actually you can because you do have a majority in this case.
2 out of 3.
There's 2 out of 3.
Okay.
So it's or if you'd like, we can go ahead and
I don't
Yeah,
continue them on, but you can
if you
approve
guys
them.
agree, then it's fine.
Yeah, I only had one comment, and that was on the last page for case.
Forgive us,
Whatever that was. Case 2 PDR 2011-027A. Item number 5 says change the garage door color from white to mahogany. Regardless of the project style, the following conditions should be met. And I believe that was only in the case of if the applicant chose the Spanish style design, which should then move that comment to item number 2. Because we gave them the either or to do Spanish style or minimal traditional style, and then we said,
Correct.
okay, if it's this style, do these things. If it's traditional style, do these things. And I believe that one was for the particular style, not in any case do this, right?
Yeah.
Is that how you?
Correct.
Okay, so
You're right.
so condition number 5 on the very last page.
Right. The third bullet item.
It would be the third bullet item for change the garage door from white to mahogany. Then would be moved to condition number 1 or condition number 2 for Spanish style.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Right.
And is there another? Just that particular
That's
one?
it. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
all I
So
noticed.
with that correction made,
I believe so. Let me just.
2. Okay. With that.
Vivian, do you want to give me the corrected version for signing, or
We'll go ahead and make that correction if that's.
and then sign it
And then we'll.
later,
Well,
or not?
actually, since it's not on the signed copy, if you don't, if you'd like us to make the correction, I'll make sure that it gets into the
Okay.
corrected minutes and sign it there.
Sure.
However, I would need to have a motion made and the minutes approved before you sign any documentation.
Sure.
So we can vote on it.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
so I move to approve the minutes of April 12th.
And I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Board Member Sakai, second by Board Member Karoglian. And I would assume that it's all in favor since only the motion and the second were made by the board members. So with that said,
Do you usually sign it front, or does it matter?
Actually-
or
we'll take care of housekeeping. I think there should be a
Later.
signature page at the very end. And so if there's
Yeah, it
not, then
doesn't
I'll
have
make
it.
sure that
Yeah, it
our
doesn't have
admin
it, that's why.
staff
Okay.
makes note of that. So, all right. There are no other staff announcements. Any from Mr. Platt? Mr. Platt is sitting in for Stephanie Wright.
Thank you.
As you know, Stephanie Wright is somewhere probably right now in Germany, so we'd like to wish her a wonderful trip. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to move.
All right, motion carries. Adjourn the meeting at 6:45. Thank you.